I'm Alicia, entirely psyched, and I just passed my licensed educational psychologist exam, and I'm now a licensed educational psychologist. Very excited to share my process, what I did to study, what the exam was like in real time, so you can pass that exam when you are ready. All right, so the day of the exam, I made sure to get as much rest as I could, and I brought my two forms of ID. Um, I had some headphones with me because I was listening to some music beforehand, and you just have to, when you go in, you check in, you show your two forms of ID. They're going to take your palm print and check your glasses if you're wearing them or anything that you have on you, like that you need to wear, I guess. And then everything goes in the locker, including your phone that you turn off right away as well. It takes maybe a few minutes to wait once you get there to be let in. I actually got let in a little earlier than my appointment time because I was there a half hour early. They had recommended being there a half hour early. I think it just really depends on how busy your test site is. I am someone who lives in California and I live in the East Bay, and so I signed up for the Oakland location that's located on 1000 Broadway, and it's pretty clean, nice. The person downstairs is used to people taking tests regularly, so they kind of have you sign in at first downstairs. They assign you to an elevator, you go up, you go to the testing location, Pearson, and like I said, you go through all those registration or check-in procedures. It's a quiet test center. You're let in by a different person who kind of frisks you and makes sure that you don't have anything like electronic in your glasses or on you. Like they do like a metal detection or even like electronic frequency detection, and then you're let in. It's a computer-based assessment, the LEP, and there were about maybe 136 or so questions. And I had 120 minutes. So about 2 hours to take that test. I am generally a really good test taker. I mean, I didn't start out that way, but I've learned through the years in my education and experience as an educator taking different tests that you have to read the question, really focus on what they're asking or what they're getting at based on the details that they give you. The 136 questions or so, they were all scenarios, different little vignettes of telling client information, or even not just clients, but like a school situation where maybe a licensed educational psychologist was asked to consult and work with the school team on attendance or violence in the school, and what your role would be based on what your job entails. So you have to know what a school psychologist does, you have to know laws, you have to know assessments, age groups for counseling, different details in that way. And you get to take the exam after 3 years of being a school psychologist. So you have a good amount of knowledge in general just from practicing school psychology. And then if you do need to beef up on special education law or law and ethics, that's a good idea because there are some specific questions or vignettes related to age of consent for counseling. There's a lot of questions that kind of share the age of the client or the age of the student. I mean, they even include adults up to age 80 in these vignettes. And how would you approach treating them assessment wise, like what assessments you would use, as well as how would you treat them in counseling settings as well. Or if they have a new diagnosis, what would you recommend in terms of supporting them in their education? They mentioned even 55-year-old students in the community college. So you need to know, your stuff, how you would assess someone, how you treat someone based on their age, because, there's different tests you would use in different circumstances or, dealing with different clients at certain ages. So I went through all the questions and I was done with a half hour to spare. So it took me maybe an hour and a half to get through all of the questions. I spent roughly maybe a little over a minute on, well, no, less than a minute on each question. Some were easier than others. And then I went backwards because I found that towards the end, I was going through questions a lot more quickly than I was in the beginning. I was being more careful. And I wanted to make sure that in the last questions I did, as far as back as I could go, I was looking carefully at the details, thinking carefully about my responses, because I know that I was paying much more attention at first than I was at the end. It actually proved to be successful for me because when I went back, I noticed maybe about 10 questions that I decided to change the answer for. And this was a combination of maybe missing certain details or overlooking certain details that they were presenting, or just kind of reflecting on my general knowledge and remembering, like, oh yeah, I would respond this way best versus the other. And I mean, you have four options, and sometimes all four options seem like a good choice, and you have to pick the best one based on best practice, ethics, laws, and just assessments in general. So, I mean, I am going to be honest. I did not study as much as I wanted. Some life stuff came up, and I was stressed, and I ended up putting it off longer than I wanted. I started testing maybe a week solid before the test itself. I took it on a Saturday, so I didn't have to worry about anything else, and I could just go in fresh and think about the test alone. A lot of options are during the week, and I just knew that's something that I didn't really want to do after work. I think my energy would have been way down, and I didn't really want to miss work for it. So you have to really think about what kind of person you are in terms of energy level, what you're capable of doing after a full day of work, or if you're willing to take that time off. But if you know yourself well enough and you have practiced in the field for as long as you know have, I was a school psychologist for about 5 years, and before I decided to get my LEP, you're going to do fine. And I think part of my success is I am a nationally certified school psychologist, NCSP, with NASP. And with NASP, being an NCSP, you need to have 75 hours or credits of professional development. And that kind of keeps you up to date in all the most recent practices, anything new coming out, new tests, procedures on certain tests or assessments, laws and ethics, recommendations, collaborating with other professionals on a regular basis. And I think that really helped me in the long run not have to study as much as maybe someone else who's not keeping up with professional development in that way. I think, the majority of school psychologists I know always, take an opportunity to do professional development if it's being offered. There are quite a few free options with PAR or different tests publishers, and you'll get the opportunity to do this at low or no cost. I've been able to renew my NCSP with very little expense. I did attend NASP workshops online. I attended NASP conventions, which costed, but it was worth it. It was nice connecting with the community. And this year I didn't attend NASP online, but I purchased schoolpsychology.com subscription for the year. It's $99 for the beginning of your special, and you get, quite a few professional development options that are NASP approved or APA approved. And there are some, popular names on there, people well known and really good topics that apply to the law and ethics requirement, or the diversity and inclusion requirement. But I've strayed. I will talk about the NCSP in a different video. Back to my point, being an NCSP with NASP and being a part of an organization really helped in cutting down the study time, because, like I said, always on top of the latest and greatest in school psychology. When I did study, there was a number of books I revisited from my schooling, and I'm going to post those on another video and share those specific titles that might help you out or you might be interested in. But I spent a good amount of my study time on Quizlet. There are other school psychologists who created study notes, and why reinvent the wheel? So it was already there, and there's maybe a good maybe 5 to 10 options of school psychologists who have flashcards. So yeah, I just used what was already there. It was really helpful. Thank you, school psychologists who have used Quizlet, because that's primarily what I used, and that's kind of how my brain works. Me just reading text and like articles, like heavy duty text, is not going to really help me. But flashing through those facts and like remembering things, I'm a visual person too, really helped. So that is what the test was like in real time, a little bit of what I did to study and what benefited my studies. I'm going to go into more detail with what materials I studied next.